Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. I had a chance to see the new Masters of the Universe movie. This will be my non-spoilery review. The last live-action He-Man movie was Dolph Lundgren's 1980s version, so the new movie tries to see if it can please both the older fans of the franchise and onboard a whole bunch of new younger fans at the same time, launching a reboot of the entire franchise that can last through a whole bunch of sequels. So we will talk about whether or not this movie actually has the power to last to make all the He-Man puns possible. This is also a great opportunity to add to my sword collection with the He-Man Power Sword, so Mattel, please sell more replicas of the Power Sword. Travis Knight, the director, literally just did this same thing several years ago, you'll remember, with the Transformers Bumblebee movie. New movie in a pre-existing big franchise, just happened to be Transformers, that was intended to serve as a reboot of said franchise, and that's basically what they're doing with this new live-action Masters of the Universe. So we will talk about whether or not I think they were actually successful in doing that, trying to honor pretty much every version of Masters of the Universe that's been on screen before, even some of the comics that helped launch the original toy line back in the early 1980s, and make it friendly enough for brand new audiences who have never watched any version of He-Man before. I am going to do a separate post-credit scene video and full breakdown of all the Easter eggs and references later this week after the movie comes out everywhere. People do have a chance to see it, so be sure to go see it as soon as possible because there are a couple real big post-credit scenes. It almost felt like 10 extra people with machine guns from Amazon came out into the audience to shoot people on sight if they were recording that while I was watching the movie. But the movie is intended to be a total reboot of the Masters of the Universe franchise. Even though it references the Dolph Lundgren version, it heavily references the original 1980s cartoon, the 2002 cartoon. I didn't see any big references to the more recent Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe on Netflix, but that was probably just because they were making this movie. They were developing the movie at the same time they were making that cartoon, so none of the people making the movie had actually seen his cartoon yet. Nicholas Galitzine plays Adam, He-Man, Camila Mendes plays Teela, Jared Leto is Skeletor. I know there are going to be a lot of questions about this, and I had a lot of questions going into it knowing that he was playing Skeletor. Does he go full Morbin time? Is this movie just another example of Morbin time?
You didn't see that coming?
And thankfully I can say no, it is not. You never actually see Jared Leto's face inside Skeletor's head. You wouldn't know it was him if you didn't actually read anything about this movie before you went to see it. And his performance, surprisingly, is actually pretty good. It is very much in the tone of classic 1980s Skeletor. Idris Elba is Man-at-Arms, Alison Brie is Evelyn. I'll focus mostly on them in this review video since they took the majority of the story in the movie. It does feature many of the classic Masters of the Universe characters, but not every single one from every single wave of toys. Like, there are still a lot of toys in the toy box for the sequel. There were a couple hidden characters that they left out of the trailers that appear in post-credit scenes. There are two post-credit scenes. One of them is just like a funny reference to the classic Masters of the Universe cartoon episodes, and the other one is a big canonical sequel teasing moment, like earth-shattering reveal that was very important for the future of what they're doing with the next movie, so do stay through the credits. I'll talk more about what's in them and what they mean later this week. But I feel like the trailers have actually done a pretty good job of selling you on what the actual vibe of the movie is, and it's mostly Flash Gordon mixed with Thor Ragnarok. Even the people that made the posters were inspired by a lot of the Flash Gordon posters, so you can kind of see the comp here. They even use Brian May from Queen to do some of the music, and a lot of the music has vibes of Queen and Freddie Mercury, who also did Flash Gordon's soundtrack, and the movie also uses the title song from the Highlander movie, the original Highlander movie, classic Queen, classic Freddie Mercury. One of the other singers that they brought on to do a new song for Masters of the Universe is also giving a lot of Freddie Mercury vibes too. Here we are, born to be kings. I'm kind of bummed that I can't use the actual music in my review video here, or the video would get heavily copyrighted. Like, it's a real big problem trying to use people's music on YouTube. But the music is out there. You can actually listen to the soundtrack right now. So do remember what kind of movie you're going to see when you step into the theater to actually watch this. This isn't like the Dark Knight version of He-Man. They're not Dark Knighting the He-Man character. But given the Flash Gordon and Thor vibes, I think the movie hewed a little closer to Thor Ragnarok than, say, like Thor Love and Thunder. If we're talking about versions of Thor here, like how silly did the movie get? Not quite as silly as Thor Love and Thunder, thankfully. There were some jokes that did not land, and the Earth-based stuff during the beginning of the movie does drag a little bit, but once Camila Mendes' adult version of Teela shows up in the film early on, then the movie comes back to Eternia, things really do start to pick up. And the movie does the rare thing of getting better the further along it goes, so the climax actually plays way better, and the movie ends in a really strong place, pushing into the sequel.
I am the villain. Does it feel good?
For those of you that are coming into this as pre-existing fans of some version of Masters of the Universe, the second half of the movie is probably the movie that you were expecting when you heard they were doing this in live action. Like, oh, that's the He-Man movie that I wanted. The first bit of the movie is mostly dedicated to onboarding those brand new fans, younger fans. Like if you're a millennial or a Gen X He-Man fan and you're taking your kids to see this, that's what the first part of the movie is for, to like explain to them who He-Man is, like crash course in Masters of the Universe before they completely dive into the toy bin. And thankfully, they avoided the Surf Dracula problem that a lot of these newer IP movie reboots have. They didn't wait too long for Adam to transform into He-Man. That actually happened much earlier in the movie than I was expecting. Probably my biggest surprise was Jared Leto's Skeletor. I came in fearing the worst after watching him bomb after bomb the last couple of years, but he actually wound up being pretty good in this. And if you watch the original cartoons, you will recognize a lot of his performance and jokes. There are a lot of Skeletor jokes, and all of them got real big laughs in my theater. Most of the biggest reactions in my theater were the Adam to He-Man transformations, though. That really drove people over the top. Yes, there is a lot of comedy in the movie. The jokes that did not work were mostly part of the Earth-based subplot. It's not terrible bad. The movie does wind up justifying the use of so much Earth by the end of the movie in really trippy ways that you have not seen in any version of Masters of the Universe before. So the movie does get a little meta with the climax in the final big battle between He-Man and Skeletor, but that is probably one of the better parts of the movie. Like, the best parts of the movie are the He-Man and Skeletor stuff. So it really does feel like they nailed the most important parts. There is a lot of cool lore that they set up in this movie. I don't view it as being any kind of big retcons because this movie is meant to be a total reboot of the franchise, and the stuff that they added were all things that were at least implied in the classic cartoon or the classic comics. We can dig into a lot of that new lore and questions that it raises in my breakdown video later this week. But if you've been watching any version of He-Man or Masters of the Universe before this, you'll recognize a lot of the stuff that they're teasing in the background, like just things that they hint at. I thought that Nicholas Galitzine did a solid job as both Adam and He-Man. You could tell Travis Knight really wanted someone who could play a good Adam and a good He-Man, not just somebody who was a big bodybuilder who was just super huge as He-Man. They actually started doing this way back with the more modern cartoons like the 2002 version, the more recent Netflix version, more of a fully formed character than just the simple action figure that shouts catchphrases a couple times and transforms into He-Man. So there is a lot of Adam in this movie in addition to being a lot of He-Man in the movie. Camila Mendes was solid. I never thought of her as an action star before this. Most of my experience with her has been from Riverdale, like a lot of people. She had great chemistry with Nick, though. They treat their romance in the movie the same way that a lot of the cartoons have treated it since the 2002 version.
Sometimes you have to go, you have to go through the back door to get to where you want to go.
And since this is just the first movie in a franchise, most of it is just sexual tension. If they do make it to a full trilogy, maybe we'll see them actually get together at some point in the future. But I do feel like the two of them work together. Like, chemistry is very, very important for those characters. You could definitely tell Idris Elba was having way more fun in this movie than he had in any of the Marvel movies as Heimdall. He definitely knew which movie he was in. A lot of the times in big movies like this, you can get actors that are all over the map in terms of performances, like Marvel movie, DC movies, where some people go way too big with it, some people trying to be too comic booky or too silly or over the top, or sometimes playing it way too seriously. But it did feel like everybody in this movie understood the assignment, and I think that's mostly down to Travis Knight, just keeping everybody on the same page as director, like corralling a herd of cats, battle cats if you want to make the He-Man puns. Alison Brie was A+ as Evelyn. I never thought of her as an action star either, but at least in this type of movie, this tone, she was great, and she did great in all the comedic scenes with Skeletor too. She and Skeletor got some of the biggest laughs in the movie. You only get a little bit from the supporting characters like the rest of the toy box, but they are all fun, both the heroes and the villains, so I do hope to see more of them show up in the sequel. I got a lot of questions about Cringer in my trailer videos because you never hear Cringer talk in any of the trailers. There are two versions of Cringer, both of them talk, Baby Cringer and Adult Cringer, each of them with their own different voice actors, Tom Wilton and Fletcher Glenn. I wasn't familiar with either of them going into this movie, but both of them were fine, and Adult Cringer does have a couple of jokes in the movie that got some of the other biggest laughs in the theater that got super meta. Like, there are moments in the movie where it does become very self-aware of itself. I was also happy to see Amazon and MGM use Cringer for the actual logo in the movie, the way they did in the trailers that changed over time. It was an easy slam dunk for the fans. Originally, they started with the regular MGM logo in the first teasers, but then fans are like, why don't you just put Cringer in the actual title? Like, you should put him in the logo here, it just makes sense. And they eventually did, they just listened to fans. The only thing that didn't really work for me in the movie, like some of the weaker points, were the Earth-based stuff, the Earth characters, and James Purefoy, for some reason, was doing the weirdest accent you have ever heard come out of his mouth. Robert Pattinson would be impressed with his weird accent in this movie. He is such a great actor, his natural British speaking voice sounds so good, I have no idea why they didn't just let him use it in this film. I assume because they didn't want his King Randor to be the only British sounding person in the movie, but I don't think that anybody would have cared about that. And yes, the CG was very heavy on Eternia, but it looked better than it did in the trailers. It didn't turn into CG slop or like a Quantumania situation, like it wasn't that bad. The best parts of the movie, though, like I said, were all the He-Man and Skeletor stuff, so I do feel like they really nailed the stuff that they were supposed to nail that were important for actually turning this into a legit franchise. Really interested to see how they adapt some of the other characters and the storylines that they tease for the sequels. We will talk more about that later this week. I think a lot of this succeeding as a long-term live-action new franchise at Amazon is just dependent on the casual audiences embracing these characters. But if you've seen the Transformers Bumblebee movie, it does have heart in the same way that that movie has heart. Like, it's very much in the same vibe of that movie. So I do feel like Travis Knight was probably the right person to actually direct this. Once you do have a chance to see the movie, post your reactions in the comments below, and I will post more spoilery videos later this week, so do try to hold all your spoilers to those videos. My post-credit scene video, my full Easter eggs breakdown, will post after the movie actually comes out in theaters in a couple days. Everybody click here for those. I'll update the links when I post those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.